So that's why I'm so late.
That's okay. Most people are working this week, so that will be blacked out.
Okay, good, good. I'm glad you said yes to being on the menu list for the housing task force. Thank you, that's good.
Good evening. A call to order August 5th, 2026 meeting for the Civil Rights Board to order at 5:01 p.m. Director Hewitt Smith, roll call, please.
Good evening. Director Calderon. Present. Director Moore Doyle. Joshua DeBoer. Director DeBoer, I'm sorry.
Present.
Vice Chair Sipling.
Present.
Chair Faison.
Present.
Director Dickerson.
At this time, I don't have any updates in regards to the absences for Director Moore Doyle nor Director Dickerson. Director Loopman is excused. At this time, the agenda has been distributed. Are there any additions or corrections?
I just wanted to point out that I believe that there's members of the community who had applied for the Civil Rights Board that are present here today, and I'm not sure if I'm covering all of it, but that is not included in the agenda. There was an item that I know that we needed to clarify for amendment purposes for the agenda. I just wanted to make sure I was covering it.
This is Director Sipling. That should be a part of item 6, subsection C. It's a little bit confusing because there is a line break there, but that covers nominations committee, the results of interviews, nominations, and discussion for board position. But I think as a point of clarification, yes, we do have some folks from the community in here today that we will be engaging in some of that discussion with.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Thank you both. I would also like to add in also expectation for board members. And we can add that in under C. So right before nominations committee and everything under that would move down one.
Because you're not doing it to the second.
Correct. Okay, since I don't hear any other additions or corrections, is there a motion to adopt the agenda as is now?
Director DeBoer, motion to adopt the amended agenda.
Is there a second?
Director Sipling, second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Agenda is adopted. We also have our minutes from our last meeting, which was from June 3rd, 2026. Are there any corrections? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Oh, I was just going to make the motion to accept the minutes.
Okay. Motion moved. Is there a second?
Second.
I do want to highlight, and my apologies, I did not recognize Commissioner Hoffman in attendance today as well.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Minutes have been adopted. At this time, do we have any public announcements and communications? No, not public comment. Yes, later. So at this time, I'm hearing none as far as public announcement or comments. Our first item on the agenda for discussion is going to be an update from our Education Subcommittee.
This is Director Sipling. Our major update is something that I know many of us will be excited to hear about. A few months ago, we had received some requests and community questions and information regarding having a one sheet of information that can serve to provide information about Chapter 18 and Chapter 18A, our non-discrimination code. This project was initially proposed, but there was a big important step missing when this happened a few months ago. And that big important step was failing to collect feedback from our community members. So we decided to go back to the drawing board and talk to those in our communities that are experts on this, or those who are affected by this, or people that just have an experience to share. So thanks to the hard work of our Education Subcommittee, who was greatly involved in finding experts, finding those affected by this, finding affected community members, and we have gone through several rounds of edits to come up with a new draft. In terms of just points of order, this is not a voting item. The discussion that we had on the previous occasion about this was to collect that community feedback. So it's not our role today for this discussion point to vote on that, but it is to highlight that we do have this information that's now available. And just to give sort of the reminder of what was in this information, they are two brochures that are a 8.5 by 11 size sheet, that they are a trifold brochure. And one of these brochures is for tenants and those who need to understand more about how the code can protect them. And then the other brochure is for property owners and landlords, so they can know their own rights, and so they can know how to best protect the folks that live within any of the properties that they manage. The next steps for us then is to work with our very gracious design team who has spent a lot of time making these edits, and also with printing and also with budgeting, so that way we can have these printed out and shared. what does the sharing look like, and discussing with our community partners. It will be sharing with, of course, property owners at those property owners' offices, but also it will be made available to our community partners, such as Fair Housing, so that way these brochures can be on hand and given to clients, for instance, so that way that they have the ability to just have that information on hand. We'll also see what other opportunities exist to have these available here at City Hall and in other places. So just wanted to shout out the great work of our community partners and shout out the requests that were made, those very valid and right requests to get our community partners and our affected community members involved in this process. And also thank you to city staff for their work on design and copy editing and review. So thank you all very, very much. And that concludes the information for the Education Subcommittee.
Thank you, Vice Chair Sibling. Any discussion? And I also want to put on the record that Director Dickinson did make it. Seeing none, we will move along for an update of our Ordinance Review Subcommittee. I'll just start by saying that we've been working very diligently. We've provided the rest of the board with some rewrites that Willow has been working very diligently on, and so I will allow her to go in and we can open up for discussion around those changes.
This is Director Sibling. We do have a line item in our agenda for what would be essentially as another point of order, the board here to vote on taking the text of this proposed change or whatever edits we decide that might be important to discuss here. And the way that works is this: if we were to vote on that and say, yes, this looks great from us, this proposed text then goes to the commission, and the commission decides to add that to the agenda, make changes and so forth, to then add into city code. So there are still a few more steps in this process, but just wanted to highlight that in terms of when we get to that discussion for sub-bullet point item E. So just wanted to give that heads up to give some fair warning about the discussion and the vote that we'll need to do for that point. But that's the only update I have at the moment for the other general work of the subcommittee.
Okay, seeing no discussion at this time, we will have more discussion regarding the changes later. We will move along to item C, which is going to be the expectation of the board members. Willow and I have been discussing, and we just want to make sure that everyone is aware of the expectations. She did send out an email. We need to make sure that communication is clear, emails are answered promptly. It was 72 hours, and that's excluding holidays or weekends. If you are not able to make it to a meeting, asking that you either email or text Willow and I. We are the ones who you should be letting know if you're not able to make it. And I will say previously everybody had been letting city staff know, but we were informed that it is the responsibility of the board to communicate. So we're asking that you communicate with us. Trying to think if you're, we look at it like if you're no call, no show, it's like a job. So have that communication there. If you're going to be late, that communication there. If it's part of being on a subcommittee, that communication needs to be there. If being part of a subcommittee is too much, or becoming too much, then we just ask that you politely step to the side, allow someone who may be interested in doing some extra work if you're not able to make that commitment. Any questions, anything up for discussion? And we will move along to our next item. And this is the nominations committee, the results of interviews, nominations, and discussion for board positions. So I will start off by saying that there were 3 interviews, 3 applicants that put in interviews. Usually, nomination committee would bring forth an individual who they believe would be a good fit for the board. However, this time, we got 3 good applicants in, and unfortunately, they were not able to make up their minds. Information has been provided, and I think some people might have on the committee given a decision, but everybody was provided with the information from all 3 applicants, their resume, as well as the application that they filled out. So we were also provided with notes of those who attended the interviews. So right now, we will open it up for discussion. I will say, too, the 3 individuals we had was Sharday Chambers, Sakana Johnson, and Ella Burrell. And we will open it up for discussion. And I will ask those that participated in the interviews, do you want to start us off?
Sorry, this is Chair Calderon-Wisso. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. This is Director Calderon-Wisso. And I just wanted to clarify that this was kind of a difficult process because, as the chair had mentioned, there wasn't the consistency that we would like to see on this committee in the process. So I do think I want to add that that may have added to this. I did make a recommendation, but that would be an individual recommendation, and I do know that it is the practice of the committee to make a recommendation, so it was suggested that we have this additional step in this process. I was available to go to 2 of the 3 interviews. One of the interviews that I was unable to attend, it was honestly a mix-up of times. We had selected 2 times, and I came to the one that was for a different interviewer. So I just wanted to clarify that as far as the reason why this looks a little bit different than how we would normally do that. And I really want to appreciate those that were able to attend the interview. I would like to thank, because I appreciate those that were able to attend the interview that I was not able to make. I was able to connect with one of the 2 people that attended that interview to go over notes, and I was able to use that information as well when I made my own recommendation. However, I do not have a copy of those notes to share, so I do want to apologize for that and thank the city for being able to provide us with these notes today so we're able to have this discussion.
Thank you, Director Calderon. So, as I said, we have been provided with all the information amongst the applicants. I will start off by saying that I am familiar with 2 out of the 3 candidates, and that is Sakana Johnson as well as Ella Burrell. I just had the pleasure of meeting Ms. Burrows. I have had the opportunity to engage with Sakana because I'm the Executive Director for Participatory Defense Movement Kalamazoo, which is PDMK, and being a partner in the Kalamazoo Defender's Office. So that has been a relationship that has been there for years as far as dealing with impacted community members that may be coming into the office. I will say that I had the opportunity to meet Ms. Burrell. I am so sorry, Burrell. I'm going off memory versus, and so you see that wasn't very good, versus looking at the paper. I had the opportunity to meet Ms. Burrell when the situation that occurred in Spring Valley Park. We ended up having a meeting with KDPS, Parks and Rec, as well as other community leaders a few days after it happened. And I actually had the pleasure of sitting next to Ms. Burrows as well. Ms. Burrell, I'm just gonna give you a whole new last name. I had the pleasure of sitting next to her. That was a situation that brought a lot of attention to Kalamazoo, videos that went viral, that a lot of community was even outraged about. And so we were actually able to come to a complete understanding on both ends with KDPS as well as those that help people and family together out there in Spring Valley Park. And so just seeing the passion and feeling the passion at that time, and I only say that because at that point in time, I just kind of felt emotions about ready to explode even out of Ms. Burrell. So that is what I will put in regards to the two candidates that are here. But as I said, there's three. I'm not sure if anyone else has anything that they want to add in regards to any candidates.
So, Chair, I'm just trying to understand, all of you or some of you were in all three of the interviews, or?
So no, we have a nomination committee. That nomination committee consists of Director Calderon, Director Moore Doyle, as well as Commissioner Hoffman. And so those are the three, and as well as city staff being in and participating. And so I believe, and I think city staff could probably say best who all was in there. Okay, Director Calderon.
Yes, thank you. I would have been at all three, so I was at the interview with Sakana and Sharday, although I am also familiar with Ms. Burrell. And on that day, because I arrived at the time I thought the interview was at, I took advantage that Tanya had some time to speak with me with regards to how that went, and we shared notes. As far as the interview for Ms. Johnson, that was myself, Ursula, and Tanya. And then Sharday Chambers, that was myself and Lal. Just for transparency.
I also had an opportunity to sit in on Sakana's or Ms. Johnson's interview as well. The other two, there was a mix-up with the times and the days for me. But some notes were sent out.
Thank you. That is true. And I brought the notes from that one. I apologize. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I wasn't in the interview, but I personally know Sharday Chambers Jones, and she has been an advocate of the community for over 15 years, I believe, in several capacities, from city clerk work to social work with DHHS to housing, and she has been an all-around advocate and citizen of Kalamazoo. So I can speak to that regarding Sharday.
Thank you, Director Dickinson. Director Calderon?
Yes, I just want to add that Sharday was going to try to make it today, but I believe she had another,
She's at a conference.
yeah, so that was a shame. I did also want to mention that all three were invited today.
Thank you, Director Calderon. So, as Director Calderon stated, this process is looking a little bit different than past practice. And I will say too, regarding the interviews, there was some, I think as people saying they had mix up of times, and so we just want to make sure that we are diligently checking the times, the places, because these interviews could actually happen in person or virtually. The other thing I also want to raise as well is the process. And so with the interviews, everyone is asked the same questions. And the interview is conducted with the Civil Rights Board. And then we also have 2 city staff members. And I believe, was it Ms. Chambers' interview, which was the last interview?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and so that was the last interview that was conducted. And so that interview began before a Civil Rights Board member even made it. And I think Law said she had began and asked 2 questions. So that was something that has been raised about the Civil Rights Board and being present during all of the process of it, and also saying that the Civil Rights Board should be the one that is actually conducting the interview. And I only say that too, we have gotten strict processes and what city staff is there for in regards to the Civil Rights Board. And so I just also want to make sure that when it comes down to the side where the Civil Rights Board is, what their position is and what they need to be doing, that part of it is also respected. With candidates coming today as well, not long before making it to this meeting, one of the things was because each candidate, as said, was invited. And so receiving an email saying that a question had to be, or every question had to be asked to each candidate equally to say the same thing across the board so that it could be equitable. So instead of us asking questions, what we said is we will allow you 2 minutes if there's anything that you would like to say on your behalf, versus us asking direct questions.
I just want to get some clarification. So you're saying that you're asking the 2 candidates that you currently have in person for them to come to the mic? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that was the intentions.
Okay, so how are we going to handle Ms. Chambers? Is it Chambers? Ms. Chambers, how are we going to handle her?
She was also extended an invitation.
May I ask, because I just heard about this earlier before we come, when did we reach out to the candidates to come in?
They were not given adequate notice in order to, if we would like to, if for all of them to have a fair chance it would have had to have been over the amount of time that they were given less than 24 hours.
Okay, so that's not fair time, especially with her being so I don't know how you want to proceed with this process.
Did you extend the invitation? Okay.
Can I chime in here?
That was my question also. With one of the candidates that I know that she's at a conference, I think at the Radisson for her job, and would she be given another opportunity to speak, or?
No, this would have been the only opportunity because we're going to try to vote to have someone put on the agenda for city commission. Director DeBoer?
Yes, my suggestion would be, I guess, that we forego having the comments from the applicants since adequate notice was not given, and that expectation that they needed to be here in order to give that was not, is my guess, it was not given, that it was not said, hey, you need to be here for this, and it wasn't adequate time. And I think, I don't want to hold that against the candidate for not being able to move around their schedule for, an application that they didn't know was happening.
I completely agree, and I'm just going to take that a little bit further and say that this is kind of why it was interesting to me that we were changing the process and there wasn't really clarity around how that was going to happen. And so, I feel bad that it wasn't done on time for them, but also I didn't have the information that, hey, you had to be here, this is your only opportunity, that we weren't going, the understanding was that they were going to come here and we were going to have the opportunity, or the entire board was going to have the opportunity to ask them questions, which is outside of the process, which before was just a recommendation from the nomination committee. So on one end, my bad for not giving them enough notice. On another, there was no clarity around the expectations for what I had to do. So.
Thank you for that clarity. And I will say, as far as the interview process, there is not anything that is strictly outlined in the bylaws to say how it should work. I do agree that there was not ample time given, and I agree that it would be unfair with the time and Ms. Chambers not being able to make it, to allow the other individuals the opportunity to move forward and make a comment today. So as of now, there needs to be a decision on who we would be moving forward, though, to add to this board. Yes. Commissioner Hoffman.
Thank you all. So let me just say there's two things. One, this is a wonderful conundrum that we are in, that we had 3 worthy candidates come forward. So I want to raise that up and say thank you to you all who have done that. The other thing is we don't have to move in urgency right now. I think one of the lessons that I see around us is, like, we can have all kinds of committees and subcommittees. However, it may be feasible and more important to have candidates come before the full board and take that out of the, versus going through the Civil Rights Board, then we make a recommendation to the board and then it goes to the city. If we were all in the process of doing that, kind of similar to what we do with the city managers and the city attorney, if we make a decision in that recommendation, that removes an entire step out of the process, which can get us to the end goal. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman. Vice Chair Sibling.
Yes, I appreciate how it was put. This is a growing conundrum. as we are becoming more active. As we noted earlier on, in the sort of the previous term, we had a full board at one point. Dropped down a little bit now, but we are back to filling this back up. So I just wanted to appreciate and just say a thank you to folks as you're bearing with us in the process where we are making some big changes. In fact, for instance, getting to the point we might present some potential changes to city code to the commission. And as we've mentioned, in our previous discussion point that became point C, expectations are always just needed for any organization doing anything. And so this can be one more area where we revisit process and actually codify it, so that way nobody feels like they're left hanging, or nobody feels like they are not supported or things are not up in the air. But I also think that gives us the opportunity to revisit potentially the process using other templates from other folks in the city, because I think that this is a good opportunity to do so, especially as we become more active in the community.
Okay. Director DeBoer. So based on the information that we have in the applicants, I think that Ms. Chambers would be a good addition to the board based on the work that she's done, her current position as a social worker working with the state, and I think that perspective could help us in the future as she's kind of within governmental entities. As we know, governmental entities operate completely differently than a for-profit or a nonprofit entity. So I think that perspective could be very helpful.
Thank you, Director DeBoer.
I agree with Director DeBoer. Ms. Chambers brings a plethora of information from local level as well as state level with government that could help us in a lot of our endeavors.
Thank you for that, Director Dickerson. So I'm also wondering, does the board feel like they need more time? And I say that because me personally, I'm torn between two candidates, which is Ms. Johnson and Ms. Burrell. And I say that because I've worked side by side with each one. And a lot of intentionality happens with interaction with impacted community members. I think that is very important. Having the ability to be relatable. Everybody had impeccable resumes, and I'm going to continue to lift that. But for me, like I said, those are the two that I am torn in between.
This is Director Sipling. Something that I might offer then, as we're navigating expectations and different folks that we might want to put forward, and especially with some of the administrative and scheduling things that have come up, I wonder if it might be prudent to think about inviting our three applicants to come join and not just attend, but to come join one or both of our subcommittees as a way of seeing folks, not as a trial, but as full subcommittee members, so that various board members here can see how those folks engage with the community and also are involved. Something that has come up in their discussion with our subcommittees is the need for involvement there. We do have quite a large email list of folks in the educational subcommittee, and not everybody attends, and not everybody, unfortunately, contributes to some of the work that we're trying to do. And so in some ways, the goal is not to create a filter, but it is to get people involved as its own end goal. But perhaps it could be one way of attempting to kind of bridge some of the gaps here of getting folks involved, getting them closer to the board. Just wanted to propose that as a potential third way between some of these options.
So, I'm sorry, I'm trying to understand. Are you saying that that is a third piece of their actual interview that they would?
So it wouldn't be a filter as some sort of way of proving their loyalty or proving something about their ability to be a stronger applicant, but rather a way that we would have more visibility for folks to, so we could offer more than just simply one single person who's promoted to us, but it might also give us some time if there was any hesitancy regarding the scheduling and administration.
This is Director Hewitt-Smith. I guess I don't hear hesitancy when we speak with Director DeBoer and we spoke with Director Dickerson. The only thing that sticks out to me is we're changing the process as we go. And these are the things that constantly, the platform that has been held as far as accountability and transparency. I don't know what the optics are for forward individuals, outside individuals who want to continue to be a part of this process, because it becomes a burden, and now we're creating obstacles and barriers that are extra steps that were not there before. Not saying that things cannot change, not saying that things cannot be modified, but doing it right in the middle of the process, I don't necessarily think that would be beneficial for the board, especially when we are constantly trying to reach individuals to come forth as stated. Yes, we had 3 amazing candidates. I was present for 2 of the 3. I'm abstaining my feedback because I already see we have we have some strife or trying to decide what we're going to do. I know we have not heard from Director Calderon, who was privy to 2 of the 3, but I don't. When we get to talking about adding individuals to subcommittees that were not originally part of the subcommittee, just to get a feel of how they may work with this community, I think we most definitely should give the benefit of the doubt to your nominated subcommittee to give you some contribution on making this decision.
Step in just really quick, and with that being said, with the process, we didn't receive an official person this time. The only person that came back and said something was Director Calderon, and she nominated Ella Burrell. And I know you were trying to speak, so I will let you speak, because my only thing is, if that's the case, that's the nomination that we have. Or we could also go into having a special meeting if the nomination committee feels there needs to be any further discussion.
Thank you, Chair. So I guess I've got a couple things to add, and maybe this can help us come to a conclusion here. Because we did essentially change the process while we were in the middle of it, and I have to take accountability for not timely inviting people here today, what I would say is that we should table this or to a next special meeting, because all 3 are not present. If you're not going to accept the recommendation, my recommendation, or have any discussion around all 3, that way the 3 people can have that opportunity. I know we're still meeting bi-monthly, so I just wanted to explain why I'm going to say what I'm going to say next. So that means we would meet again in October, right? I was given clarification around my term expiration date, which is going to be in March of 2027. We have 3 meetings prior to that. If we, and this was a question that I had, I was wondering if there was a possibility around discussing this, and maybe we can gain some clarity on this process. If we were to wait until October to revisit that, would the board be willing to consider 2 candidates, and then maybe we could present them to the city commission in order to just do something about that anticipated vacancy that we know we're going to have in less than 3 meetings. Well, it seems like it's a lot farther away because we're talking about March 31st of next year, but that is only 3 meetings away. I wanted to offer that as something at least around discussion, because we are thinking about doing things a little bit differently in the process, and I understand that there's need for that sometimes. And we have had an ongoing issue with vacancies, and so now maybe the discussion becomes also, how are we anticipating those vacancies and being proactive towards them? What I don't want to see happen is having another member of the board sit in lieu of a new member because there's a vacancy, because that's been another practice that's happened recently that was not part of the way that things have been done in the past. With understanding that things don't always have to stay the same. I get that. But this feels messy right now, and I have to take some accountability for that. And I have to say that it was frustrating to have an additional component in the middle of a process that was already a little bit frustrating.
Thank you so much for that transparency. So I think it's really also weighing whether or not waiting to October to make this decision. And I will say Director Lukeman, she did make a decision not to be here this evening, thinking we also were going to put someone forward to go onto the City Commission's agenda. So that would also mean, because per the bylaw, she is able to sit until she is replaced. And so if that's not done to October, then that means it wouldn't be until December as well. So we always also have the option as well of a special meeting. So these are some of the things that we can consider, or we can go back and leave it into the hands of the nominating committee. Director DeBoer?
Yes, Director Calderon, did you have a recommendation? Then I think the Chair Faison mentioned, what? Sorry. That you had a recommendation?
Yeah, when I was very excited, frankly, to see Raela's application come through. Full transparency, I do know her from the community. We know each other from going to school together, and I have a lot of admiration for the work that she's been doing in the community, the advocacy, and I do think that sometimes it takes somebody from outside of the areas that we know. I do agree that Ms. Sharday does have some pretty amazing qualities, and specifically around what you mentioned with working with specific entities, because it's a lot, you know, as we're all doing this work together here. It's a lot of moving parts, and having some understanding of that is really helpful. However, I do think that also when we are involved in certain things, especially within the community, and they're also tied into kind of like our employment and things like that, I just saw this as more of a community member wanting to get involved. And I did have a lengthy conversation as well with Ms. Tanya about her notes on that day, as well as Ursula. I had hoped that she was going to share them in an email, and those were to have been available for all of us today, but they're not. So that was the recommendation that I made, but I do understand, having been on this nomination committee for a while now, that that's not really the way that things have been done in the past. We've made a recommendation as a committee to the board, so that's why it wasn't presented today.
Here, I had a question. So in the past, has it been just brought forward from the voting only of the committee and not the directorship as a whole?
So the nomination, well, first off, let me say we haven't had this many applications really coming in at once.
Okay.
So there has been where there's a couple, but yes, that is the purpose of the nomination committee. They're the ones that do the interview, and then they come through and they recommend to the board. And so we'll have discussion around that as well, and then make a decision on whether or not we want to move that person forward to go onto the city commission's agenda for approval.
So is there actually a vote from us as a whole once we get the recommendations?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
This is Director DeVore. Okay, so based on the recommendation, it was for Ms. Burrell. Her current work and advocacy within the community looks like hosting, planning a couple of different events, and is that also her primary job as well, or is there another other employment there? I'm just wondering because we talked about the focus of employment of being in the system, right? Like a social worker working for the state versus working with nonprofits. So I was just wanting to get that take.
It's my understanding that Ms. Burrell is, has an adult foster care.
All right, thank you. As I see it, and what we've done in the past, I think taking the recommendation of the subcommittee is important. I know that there's a lot of back and forth on this, but if we are willing to, I would think that we can move forward with the recommendation from the subcommittee for Ms. Burrell.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do want to say there's been many issues raised this evening, and so sticking to the process would be the best thing for this evening. Maybe that is discussion that we need to have as far as how we would like for things to look in the future, and having things set in stone. And that way, because even looking at it now, because there's nothing specific, is where the opportunity for change comes in. So maybe if we get everything to where we have it outlined, then we can do it, but we can also save that discussion for another day. So if we're going to, Director Dickinson?
I'm sorry, it just does not seem like, from what I've heard tonight, that the process was done properly.
So when we talk about the process being proper or not proper, we're talking about the outside of it, to say inviting candidates, giving them the opportunity to speak, us having the opportunity to ask them questions. And so as Director Dickinson, or Director Calderon said, that they were given less than a 24-hour notice. And then, like I said, we did receive an email saying as well that each question had to be the same to every candidate. So instead of going through that, instead of doing a special meeting or figuring out a different way to do it, the nomination committee is the one that puts forth a candidate. And the reason I know that, and I'm not sure who all was on the email, but an email that I did receive from Sandra saying that is who she recommended. And that was previously, so it wasn't something.
So it's based on one of the members, not the members as a whole?
So what I will say to that as well is because we've had interviews take place with one member being there. We've had interviews take place where 2 members have been there. We've had interviews start with no members being there. So this whole process is very interesting this time. Commissioner Hoffman.
Thank you. So I think I would like to go back probably 15 minutes ago when we raised the option to table this so that we can get a restart and a reset. I think to move forward, and I don't have any voting power. I just want to say that. But in order for, we use the word equitable and equity all the time and transparency, and yet sometimes we can get caught up in the performance. So I think the best thing, my recommendation to the board would be to table this and see if we can, not one, wait till October, and two, possibly do a special election where everybody has the opportunity to present to the full board as it stands. Yes, and we're done accepting applications for this period in time.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I just want to state that I agree that this process just doesn't seem, and we tried to do the best we could with, what I would like to see is I'd like to hear from Ursula because she was also on some of these, and it's unfortunate that we don't have her perspective on that. So to your point, maybe tabling this, we could get more information, I don't know. Or I was writing down here, if we're sticking to the process, what does that look like? And how do we move forward for today and make sure that we're setting clear expectations for the future?
Thank you, Director Calderon. So what I will say as far as expectations for the future, I think that's probably a conversation for the future because this has been quite a bit this evening. I'll let you go, Director Hewitt-Smith.
I just wanted to give some clarification for Director Dickerson. But basically they summed it up. This normally, we interview, this is not the first time we've had more than one applicant, it's just, this is the first time this process kind of got changed in the process. Normally we do interview. There are times that we have full subcommittee members and then sometimes we don't. So Law and I do sit in to try to fill in that gap. Normally one of us are pretty much sitting in on their interview. When Chair Faison, you should have been telling me that. When Chairperson Faison, I'm sorry because I've been pronouncing it wrong all this time. Chairperson Faison received the email from Law. It was, the reason we said that is because this was new to us today as of probably less than an hour. So we just wanted to make sure if we're going to ask questions to the applicants, we will most definitely want to make it equitable to those to receive the same questions. But normally, yeah, the process, as they stated, nomination subcommittee does the interviewing, a recommendation comes forward, then the board votes. As Sandra, Director Calderon mentioned, the conversation with Ursula, I don't know where she swings either way, but this is new. And now the new is the interview process being put forth as it was today and the 24-hour notice. So most definitely going forward, like Commissioner Hoffman said, if you choose not to accept Ms. Burrell, I most definitely would recommend, not that this is not, I'm here to serve the board and use as an advisor. Most definitely, I would recommend tabling it because as Stephanie stated, Commissioner Hoffman stated, we are, the words of equitable and transparency is thrown around a lot in this community. So if we're going to speak these words, we most definitely have to stand on it. But also you have to look at the process as well as this board has also on numerous occasions been accused of not moving in a manner in which the community is satisfied either. So you do want to think, do you want to continue to kick this can down the road? Or do you want to recommend what, unfortunately, Director Moore is not here, but you do have Director Calderon's recommendation. But like I said, this is basically an end for you all to decide.
Dr. Hewitt-Smith, how many do we have that are actually voting? Because I heard Commissioner Hoffman say she is not a voting member. Okay, so everyone.
And nor am I.
Oh, okay. So everyone else is. Okay.
This is Commissioner Hoffman, and there was also a recommendation from Ms. Chambers as well. So we have two, and so I think it's just important for us to pause for a minute, take a deep breath, and not put such urgency on it.
You said there was a recommendation for, who recommended her? Okay, but she's not part of the nomination committee.
Well, I don't think she necessarily recommended. She spoke in positivity for her, so I don't know necessarily.
Okay, so, and I guess I'm not against tabling it. One of the things I keep hearing is how it's different than how it was done previously. I will say in regards to saying bringing the applicants, this was something that probably had come up in maybe about a week ago, but because I hadn't heard anything until the email today, I didn't think that it was occurring. So, on that side of it, which that's no shade to you. I will say as far as even this board in regards to community, the trust or lack of, I know that is the reason, and I will always lift it up, that I ended up joining this board. And I will say that since I've been on this board, everybody who's been on it has been working diligently to try to build trust with the community, as well as making sure that we can get some enforcement. As far as the process, I think that it definitely should be tabled because Director Moore Doyle was not here and was not present. She's part of the nomination committee, and as we said, those notes were not provided to any of us, as well as not even the nomination committee. Maybe we can have a special meeting, and I personally don't think, and this is my opinion, if it's being said about how we're not doing things equitable or in the same fashion that was done, then the same way we held off and didn't allow them to come up, I don't think that they should really go in front of us. I think this goes back to the nomination board and intentional discussions and then bringing forth who it is that you believe would be the best fit for the board.
This is Director DeBoer. Agreed. I think, so I will make a motion to table the nomination of the board position until our next meeting.
I second that.
Any discussion?
I have a clarifying question. So because folks are here today and somebody was not able to make it here today, should we clarify whether that's going to be something that we're going to include as part of the process for the next upcoming meeting? Are we asking for the applicants to come back at the next meeting?
No.
Okay.
You're more than welcome to come back, but
Okay.
you don't have to be present. We won't be asking any questions. We won't be going through an interview process.
Okay.
And I think and I'm not trying to rush, but probably the sooner that conversation can be had with the nomination committee, we can do a special meeting to try to get it on the books so we have a seat filled by October.
So the nomination committee needs to come back with a full nomination committee recommendation, or, because it was not, the nomination committee wasn't who requested for them to be here. It was asked of me to ask them to come here. for that separate process. So I just want to make sure that I'm not missing out on that again, and that my marching orders are clear so that we're prepared.
Yes, no, we're not going to have any, we're going to continue this process along the way it's happened. We'll have discussion later as far as any changes. Okay, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor?
I have a point of clarification.
Wait, hold on just a second.
I believe the motion was specifically about appointing somebody or voting on a recommendation at the next meeting. If we have a special meeting before then, would there be a possibility of us having somebody voted on for that appointment? Or does that only need to, can that only happen at a full meeting that's regularly scheduled?
It can happen at a special meeting. It's just not a vote that we can have through an email, but we all would have to be present in person. So a special meeting would suffice.
I would move to amend the original motion to state that we would table agenda item 6, was previously listed as 6C, now move to 6D, pending the discussion of a recommendation and also the results of a special meeting.
Any?
But I didn't get invited, but I did want to be a part. Making sure I had all the committee members.
Okay. So no further discussion? Well, is there a second or is that amendment just fine?
The amendment in second.
Okay.
Yes. Good evening, Assistant City Attorney Marcia Jones. Just as a point of clarification, because there was a modification to the original motion by Director DeBoer, he would have to accept your friendly amendment to his motion.
Thank you.
Okay, so clarify, the amendment is that, just to clarify that a special meeting still counts. Is that because we can have it during the meeting or special meeting, because we can vote on this either way? So we're just tabling it till the next time that we meet as a board.
Yes, because the original motion was to make a decision at the October meeting, but if we can make a decision at a special meeting, then it would be that we would decide on 6, what was previously C, now 6D, after the results of the nomination committee meeting and after a special meeting of the board.
Okay, so we can just amend it though to say we're tabling this until the next board meeting, because a special meeting is a board meeting.
Sorry, Law. You will have to call it a special board meeting.
Okay.
Because their notice will have to be sent out to the community, to the public.
Okay. What do I have to?
So you would just accept saying whether it's at a special board meeting or at the next board meeting?
Okay, I accept the change to say that it's either at a special board meeting or board meeting.
I'm sorry, Director Sipling, was that your friendly amendment?
It wasn't quite, but according to the point of order, what would be the best way of, with the intention that we're going for, what would be the best way of phrasing that?
If you want to say a special meeting as opposed to the next board meeting, then I would make that clarification. And Director DeBoer would have to accept that.
Okay, so are we scheduling a special meeting then?
scheduling a meeting. What we're saying is that rather than voting on October, that we would do a vote at some special meeting.
Okay.
Yes, her motion requires a special meeting.
Okay. So,
Are you accepting that?
yes, I will accept that, yes.
Okay, that just needs to be made on the record, that you accept her friendly amendment.
Okay. On the record, the friendly amendment is accepted.
The amendment is seconded by Director Dickerson.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. We will move along to our next order of business, which is E, updated to Civil Rights Board email contact.
This is Director Sibling. Our community has requested there be a more direct way of community members getting in touch with the board. As of right now, there is not a direct way of doing that. Based on how other cities who have civil rights boards and other boards in general as well, there tends to be a couple of standard ways. One process is that there is a general standard inbox called something like civilrightsboard@city.gov. And that inbox can have a few behaviors, such as forwarding that email to the members of that board. Another process is to have a website form, which is a standard form you might see like a contact form, but that works in a similar way, but rather than being based on an email address that then sends this email, forwards the email out, the form itself is what directs a comment from the community member. One reason why folks do that is because it protects a certain email address, sometimes from spam, sometimes from misuse, but that's one way of doing that. Our community has been asking this for the past 2 meetings and conversations before and after. And so this is why this conversation has begun. I believe, Lal, that I had sent an email earlier with kind of just a request of what the update might be with the city. I wonder if you have an update for the community at this time.
The update is the same update I responded to that email with, and that is there will need to be internal conversations and interdepartment conversation with the city attorney reviewing any communications or social media policy involving our cybersecurity as well. So this isn't a no, this is more of just we need to create a policy in place so that we can ensure standardization.
Thank you all. As just a point of clarification with that, I appreciated that email that you sent on the 3rd. I had responded to that on the 4th, asking about the next best preference, or if that's not feasible in the city's end, having some alternative method. I'm wondering if there's an update since that point. Thank you.
The update is still that there will just need to be internal communication. We will be taking your feedback on forms as an option for communication, but that does, regardless, still require internal communication. And our COO is aware, and so is the city clerk.
Thank you.
So I'll ask, with the form that she was saying, that was also taken back to them as well? Law?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? See.
Director DeVore. With that, I can understand community wanting the direct contact. Can you hear me? Oh, okay. With the direct contact, However, I can also see that being an issue if someone used that email address thinking that they were getting in touch with the city. And so it's going to an email box that the city is or is not managing, or miscommunications. I do think the cleaner way to do this is the current setup of them emailing the Civil Rights Division directly, and then those emails get forwarded to us. We did have a handful of months ago where community sent emails, and we did get all of those emails forwarded to us. I think that's a cleaner process, just thinking from the organization way, who has ownership of those emails and who has to respond. We know who has to respond, right? It's the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Director DeBoer. I think what it was is because community raised issues of not being able to email anyone on the board directly. And so when we first proposed it, it was saying that the emails would be inclusive for Vice Chair Sibling and myself. So that way, whatever would come through would come to us. That was just to say, being a tester, and if any other director wanted to be inclusive, then their emails being inclusive as well. I think it was really pushed because the feedback that was received, and I will say even from myself, from community, was saying just kind of wanting to have that direct communication with the Civil Rights Board, whether it was a joint email for everybody, but just feeling like they wanted it to come to the Civil Rights Board and not being sifted through the city.
I have a question. As of right now, just looking at the Civil Rights Board page at the moment, there isn't a clear contact form or a user flow, a direction that a user would take to directly contact the board. The best that exists on that page is if you scroll to the footer of the page, there is an email for 311. I'm wondering, in the interim, while the COO and others decide on policy, what is the best way at the moment for our community members to get in touch directly with the Civil Rights Board members?
As they did prior, a few months ago, that is di@kalamazooCity.org.
Thank you. I'm wondering if there's also a way that we might request that our web team be able to add that email address to the Civil Rights Board webpage as well.
That will be forwarded.
Thank you, Ella.
And I'll add, I think that is what raised concerns because no one knew how to email the Civil Rights Board previously. And so it was a matter of having to check it and figure out and provide people with information. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we will move along to our next order of business, which is F, proposed change for Chapter 18 ordinance.
Director Sibling again. Thank you. All of our board has a copy of some potential proposed language change that exists on a document that is 2 pages, and it's entitled at the top, Current Language. And as I'd like to share, what is the purpose of this agenda item? Why do we have this here? It's been brought to our attention for years at this point, before my time here on the board, that there's a desire for community members to see not just enforcement, but also the hygiene mechanism of being able to have a policy, but one that is also able to be enforced. And as a point of clarification, Chapter 18 is our code, but within Chapter 18 is also enforcement mechanisms of that code. Chapter 18, Article 3 is where that information lives. Based on my kind of looking at other civil rights boards across the state of Michigan, I've borrowed some different language from a few different sources, bless you, to kind of align this with some other cities, and something that I think will provide us with some aid in terms of allowing some of these items to be enforced. I do want to make one thing clear. Chapter 18 is not entirely about enforcing this. However, what should be clear is our community members do expect Chapter 18 to be enforced. And obviously, perception is one thing, actions are another. What counts as being within the proper location and so forth is another thing. But a concern that I have personally heard from members of our community is that what we've been told is that it feels in some ways that the Civil Rights Board, or not really the Civil Rights Board, but Chapter 18 doesn't have the same teeth that might be required to prevent some of these cases of discrimination. It's my hope that with that ideal in mind, that it does have more teeth, that a potential proposed rewrite to Chapter 18 could be presented to the City Commission. I'd be happy to take any questions about some of the proposed changed language as well.
I didn't look, but I'm gonna guess that this also wasn't provided even to community to have a, okay.
Yes, that's it. That's a good point. In terms of the provision of this to the community, this was not provided to the community because it does relate to language that might potentially be voted on. This needs several rounds of review before this gets kind of put in a final form. This is language from the board in that process. I think that would be kind of akin to for instance, the meetings about the particular social media or email policies. Those are probably more about process and getting some of the process things right, rather than somebody, myself, who is not an attorney, presenting something to the wider community as a final document. Even, of course, we know it's not final. I've made this clear a few times that this does have a few steps to go through, but that was intentionally not offered at that point while it's still in this draft phase.
So, and the reason why I asked that is just you can kind of give a little bit of what you're seeking with the changes.
Yes, to get to the spirit of this without directly reading it word for word, as it is still a draft, the change that is proposed is to Article 3, Section 18.9, subsection B, which is that there is a threshold sufficiency review to determine if a complaint is timely filed within the proper form, that is, it takes place in the city of Kalamazoo and alleges a cognizable claim, which is basically to say it's something that doesn't meet the criteria of the non-discrimination. The other change that's a part of this is that if the complaint alleges a cognizable claim under the Chapter 18A, an investigation of the complaint with the assistance of the city attorney's office or personnel from other city departments can take place. And essentially what's going on is a continuation of the rest of the process, but it begins with taking a look at the complaint from the city's end. This is a slightly different process because as of the current moment, the procedure has been to refer things to the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, which is something that is certainly okay to do. Some types of complaints can live in a couple of different areas. They could be municipal, they could be civil, they could be regulatory with the department or with law enforcement, they could be criminal, and so sometimes things can live in multiple boxes, essentially. Rather than having everything be referred, which has something of a longer timetable, it does allow some of these things to take place at a more local level with our own community members, a little bit closer to home. The other part of this as well, in speaking with the Michigan Department of Civil Rights education team, one thing that they do note is how often things are referred, not just kind of, there's a term for this that I'm blanking on, is there's one type of referral that kind of just passes the whole thing on. There's another type of referral that is to say, yes, we're going to handle this here and also with the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. I was informed that they do keep track of what cities only do these sorts of referrals. the referrals where they get completely passed along versus the providing some information that says, yes, you can also provide this complaint to the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, also fair housing, also potentially the EEOC or other regulatory legal bodies that oversee these types of things.
This is Director DeBoer. So my understanding is most of what we're doing is clarifying the process of the complaints, right? So either we're investigating, we're referring out, or we're dismissing, right? And within the investigation phase, you can investigate and refer out, or it can just be referral, or it's a dismissal if it doesn't constitute, a violation of the claim. And I think the process here is to clarify what that process is, and then to get a little bit more formalized documentation of what complainants get back, is my understanding.
Yes, and just for clarity on that, if something falls within this whole standard criteria of it meeting a sufficiency review, of being timely filed within the proper form, and alleges a cognizable claim within the city of Kalamazoo, that it cannot just completely be passed on to the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. That's the one key change that's there. So the decision tree is not that if something is validly here in the city, that it will be pushed on to the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. It's that it will be looked at here, and we can also, as this draft language says, notify the complainant in writing of the right to file concurrently with relevant applicable external agencies.
Thank you. Does this need a review from the attorney's office or the city manager's office before this gets proposed or approved by our board to the commissioners?
Yes, this will need a review. At this point, the board here is deciding to propose this to the city commission, whereas right now we have very friendly attorneys. But as of right now, in terms of the formal process of adopting language, the commissioners can request that specifically.
So currently on the agenda, we would be voting on whether to accept this as written, to send it to and recommend that the city commission adopt this version.
As a point of clarity, we would recommend that they adopt this type of language. And just as a reminder of our board, we are not an oversight board, but an advisory board. So the commission could choose simply not to take up what we're offering at all. The idea is that within the scope of their ability, if we were to propose this to them, there's nothing that obligates them to accept this exactly as is. But we are advising that this is something that they would take, and given their ability to bring on the hired staff of the city, such as at the attorney's office or the city manager, that's when that official step would come in.
Okay, thank you.
So just for more clarity, today is informational only, and in the future, we may do an adoption or approval or recommendation to send to the city commission, but tonight is just for informational purposes.
No, so we need something to give to the city commission,
Okay.
so that they can go through the review process. But I mean, obviously why does it work this way, I think is a kind of a back question that we might ask. Certainly I could go talk to a city commissioner just on my own as a private citizen and say, I have a resolution for you to adopt, or a potential change to adopt. And the city could, or the commissioner could decide that they want that to be put on the agenda. So that is a possibility that anybody could do. The difference for this process is that we, as an officially appointed body, an advisory body, is coming together to say, we have something that we would like to put forward to you. So it's essentially a slightly more formalized version than just a private citizen doing that, because again, we are an advisory board. We are not an oversight board. And again, if we were to propose something to the city commission, they would do reviews throughout the process of potentially changing city code. That is a big thing to do. It's not something that is done on a whim, but as of right now, the board doesn't have particular city resources to propose this sort of change. We can give something to commissioners to then look at together and then decide what they would like to do with that whether that's multiple rounds of review, whether that's rewriting, whether that's changing some of this stuff together. But it's that we have more of kind of a force together more than just as a private citizen offering something.
And I just wanted to add with number 3 to the dismissal. A huge difference there is saying that it would actually have to have the specifics lined out, and we're presented with it as well as the complainant. So we would know exactly why, and they would know exactly why specifically it was dismissed.
Yes, once again, Director Sibling is not an attorney, and so she hesitates to read this exactly word for word, but this is a shorter statement here. So basically it says that dismissal of the complaint if after review of the city attorney's office, the allegations do not allege a cognizable claim or do not constitute a violation of city ordinances, the dismissal notice shall state the specific basis for dismissal. This is likely something that's already being done to some degree, but this simply formalizes that process in a way that there is a paper trail as to why this happened.
Any further discussion? Seeing none. So with this, as a body, we decide whether or not we would like to send this over for the City Commission to take a look at.
I just want to make a comment, and I don't have it in front of me, but I'm sure board members have the complaint procedure process. So there is an outline process that's not part of the ordinance. Is it your desire to make that process part of the ordinance as opposed to a standalone document?
That is correct. That is a part of that process. And just as a side note there as well, we do actually have the sort of decision tree process that does live as a part of our upcoming brochure as well. So that way residents will be able to see that will be in the upcoming renters brochure. Thank you.
Okay, any questions or discussion further?
Yes, Director DeBoer. My concern is just sending this directly to the City Commission without it being reviewed first by the Attorney's Office and coordinating with the city, like the Chief Operating Officer, just providing this to the City Commission as a fully fleshed out item without them having to do any of that additional work. And my opinion is I think we'd have a better chance of getting it adopted, having checked the other boxes within the city.
Can I ask a point of clarification to our city attorney that's here? Is the Civil Rights Board able to request official counsel from the city for measures related to this one? Or is that only at the behest of commissioners?
I'm not sure what you mean by council. If you want us to review this document, yes. Our office has reviewed the entire chapter, parts of it. Yes, we could do that.
And with that process, is there some sort of, I just want to make sure that there's a paper trail created with that? Would there be something that would give a set of notes in terms of like required language or suggested language? Or what would sort of the deliverable of that review look like?
Yes, we would take a look at it, and actually it would be me, and provide any feedback from a legal standpoint to the board. And then the board then can either take that legal advice or not and proceed to the commission.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Attorney Jones. I'm asking, what does that timeline look like as far as being provided feedback from you?
Oh, well, depends on when you give it to me, what other things I have, obviously, that are pressing. I could have it at the next scheduled board meeting.
Okay, and would your feedback come back to us? Because I know when we did rewrites previously, your concerns were taken to Attorney Leal, and so I want to make sure that would it still happen that way, or would it be a matter of bringing whatever concerns and giving us the chance to see what we needed to work on first?
Yes, it would come from my office to the board.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I do apologize. The side conversation is based off of, one, providing it to Attorney Jones to look over it, but also we have a liaison to say being able to take it to the city as well to look at it, and this also can be done simultaneously.
Chair Faison, I also would like to say and encourage us to be bold and to be very audacious and courageous in doing this work. You know, part of why we're here today is because there was an entire ordinance that was presented to city staff and to the attorney's office years ago that had teeth, and it was, in my opinion, watered down. And so if there's language that the committee has researched and is being done in other municipalities, this may be a time that we consider ourselves to be bold and take a step without going through this extra step where, you know, anybody's interpretation could change what we're trying to do. And so when we look at the ordinance, it can be very subjective in nature. But what we do recognize is that our community members continue to suffer and people are still being discriminated against, even though we have an ordinance in place that covers them. So I encourage us to think outside of the box on this one, and if you all want to have me take it to the commission, to the CMO's office, I'm more than welcome to do that. And the city attorney's office also has the means to review it as well. It doesn't have to be one or the other, it can be both.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman. Vice Chair Sibling.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think that is within the spirit of why this was initially brought forward in the first place. This is one of the things that I have personally heard perhaps the most complaints about. So in the spirit of two things. One, I would never like to do anything that would go over and against like the board's decision as a whole, but I do also appreciate that Commissioner Hoffman, if you did want to present this in some form or capacity, that you would certainly be welcome to. Obviously, it would because it's a part of work related to the city, it could become a public document. And so I would just want to say those two things clearly. Or I guess perhaps maybe not super clearly, but I do want to respect both of those two things at the same time.
What I also heard Vice Chair Sibling say, like going outside of the entire board. So I'm going to say, Director Calderon, Director Dickinson, you've had an opportunity to look. Do you have any feedback for this information on?
No, I mean, I don't have anything. It's just really clarifying some of the verbiage that exists, but I definitely like the idea of both offices looking at it at the same time, especially because there are some things that already exist, so taking a look at both of them together to see, okay, well, this is here, it exists here, but we see where you need this clarification, and yeah, I think that gives us a stronger chance of having the city commission take a look at it and understand what we're trying to accomplish by presenting this.
Thank you, Director Calderon. Director Dickinson?
No comment.
Thank you. So I will say too, I know it seems like sometimes just adding a little language or asking for a little clarity, and it could seem minute. However, this was definitely watered down from the beginning. I've been a part of this process from the beginning. And when you can look at something and it's left up to interpretation by who's reading it, that is where an issue and the issue has come in. So although they seem like minor changes, we're trying to be as effective and proficient as we can as the advisory board that we were set up to be. As of now, I personally believe that Commissioner Hoffman should take it back to the City Commission. Attorney Jones can look at it. This can be worked on simultaneously. I'm not sure if this is something we need to vote on, if a motion needs to be, or we just...
I would think that since it's a recommendation for a liaison to take it back, I think that would need to be a motion, my opinion. A motion doesn't hurt.
I guess perhaps we would need some clarification from our city attorney again, simply because the matter of our liaison can simply take this up on her own. I think what we would vote on is if we want to sort of officially as a board bring this to her versus just our liaison taking it up on her own, if I'm understanding correctly, which I'm not sure that I am.
If the board wants to approve the language, that would then need a motion, and then going forth to either my office or to Commissioner Hoffman would not need a motion.
Thank you.
So is there a motion to approve the language so that we can pass this on to Commissioner Hoffman as well as Attorney Jones? And approving this language does not mean that there won't be some type of modification along the way, or it not accepted at all, or it it being accepted 100% the way that it is.
I move that we make a motion to approve the language that has been presented to us by our vice chair to take to Commissioner Hoffman and to our Attorney Jones regarding Chapter 18, correct?
Yes, thank you. That was moved by Director Dickinson. Is there a second?
I can second that.
It was moved by Director Dickinson, second by Director Calderon. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion is passed. Our next order of business. Okay. Updates regarding the location and time. Location change, repair timeline, return to City Hall timeline, and that is item G. Well, we moved everything because of C.
Just an update from our office. I know that we mentioned that we will be relocating our meetings to the Crosstown, I want to say 150 or 155 East Crosstown. Please do not quote me on that. But the modifications were your bylaws had originally stated all meetings are to be held in City Hall. It has been modified. It has been modified to where you can host your meetings, especially in cases of alternatives at any location. So that's where the updates come in.
This is Director Sibling. Just as I had to look this up as well for the address. We had mentioned meeting at an alternative location, and that location was 150 East Crosstown Parkway, Kalamazoo, Michigan, 49001. But as one other point of clarification on that, we are not voting so that we can add that specific location, but any alternative emergency location as is needed.
Thank you for the clarification on the address. I'm still working on it myself, and that is correct.
So this was presented to the board because our, as you see, it was specific to City Hall. So now we have to accept this new language so it can be edited to be inclusive of where it will be, which is Crosstown Police Station, or if we need to hold it somewhere else. Because if something were to happen to the police station where we would be at and we had to choose another location, that would actually fall outside the guidelines. So that's why the alternative is. And so if there's no questions right now, it's just a motion to, a motion to approve this language as is to be presented for change.
Yes, Director DeBoer, I move that we accept the updated bylaws as given.
I support Commissioner Director Dickinson.
Has been moved, the motion for, to accept the edits for our bylaws for section 5.2 and 5.3. Any discussion further? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion is passed to accept the new edits to the bylaws for our location. Our next item on the agenda, okay. Civil rights complaints, updates, that is item H.
At the moment, there is no update as we have not received any civil rights complaints since our last meeting.
Thank you, Lau. So at this time, since we have no updates on complaints, we will have public comments, which will be 3 minutes. Please state your name. I will provide the call-in number. We still do have call-in. We have call-ins right after this. Call-in number is 1-888-382-9556. Once again, that telephone number is 1-888-382-9556. And if you have any comment, feel free to come to the mic. Good evening.
I was surprised that you didn't schedule a special meeting since you clearly were thinking of having one.
Just a second, your mic isn't on. And can you reset our time, please?
I'll start. I just wanted to say good evening. I was surprised you didn't set a special meeting since you clearly were talking about wanting to move more quickly than October. The September 2nd is the first Wednesday in September, which would be your regular schedule, but I understand you probably have to make sure this room's available, but I just wanted to say that would be consistent if you could schedule it then. But mainly, I wanted to invite you all to the Isaac annual meeting, which is next Tuesday, August 11th, 6:30 to 8:30 on Zoom. There will be a slideshow full of slides about Isaac's work in 2025, the Anti-Racism Task Force, the Housing Task Force are both particularly relevant to your work, and the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force and related work that Isaac's done. So I just wanted to welcome you all to come to see the Isaac annual meeting. To get the Zoom, you need to email isaackalamazoo@gmail.com. That's right, isn't it? Please remember, Isaac has 1 S for strategy and 2 A's for advocacy and action. Isaac gets tricky for spelling sometimes. isaackalamazoo@gmail.com. Thank you. It would be so nice if you could come 6:30 to 8:30 on August 11th. Anybody else want this mic?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, good evening to Chair Faison and Vice Chair Sipling, all the board, as well as our city staff, our commissioner liaison. It's wonderful to be in this space with you all tonight. My name is Sharday Davis, and I am with Isaac. I want to first say thank you all on the board, staff, commissioners, subcommittees. I always have to say this for this ongoing, difficult work. And I have to lift up. All we have to do is turn on the news, read a news article, and we see that so much is happening around civil rights and violations all over. And of course, what happens nationwide, though we don't want it to, it does trickle in locally. So the importance of this board is just magnified during this time. So thank you. I wanted to say thank you all too for taking time to talk, to dialogue tonight. You all could have rushed right through the meeting, but you all didn't, and you see that we are hanging in there with you all. We are with you all in supporting this awesome work. So thank you for taking time for that dialogue as well. I was so happy to hear that there were 3 wonderful candidates. That is so awesome. And then we look forward to hearing about the special commission the special meeting, board meeting. The nomination committee, and I want to say this, humbly, because I am not sitting where you all are sitting, but just from listening, and again, I don't have any insight, but just from listening tonight, I definitely agree with you all, those who have lifted that there needs to be a process for the nominating committee, so I just wanted to lift that as well. I wanted to say also with institutions, with organizations, we're all a part of them, right? And if we're not intentional, it's easy for the task and the duty to get done, and we leave individuals unintentionally from the table and in making decisions. So I really want to lift that up, and I give that to you all to think about and to hold. For the nominating committee, it sounds like there is a policy in place to at least have a city staff there, so that's awesome. We need a policy and a practice to make sure that board members who are on that nomination committee, in my opinion, are always there, are always able to be there. And it might slow down the process just a little bit. That's okay, because it's about inclusion and it's also about accessibility. And we want to make sure that individuals are at the interview from start to finish. And I'm talking about the board members. That's so, so important. So we look forward to hearing from you, and I look forward to hearing about this nominating committee and the policies and the practices. And again, I just want to thank you all for this vital work during this troubling time. We are here with you all, and thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else for public comment, do we have anyone on the phone?
We do not.
Thank you, Laurel. At this time, we'll be taking comments from our board members.
Thank you, Chair. This is Commissioner Hoffman. I just want to say, even though the changes will be reviewed by the Attorney's Office and will be handed out to the Commission, there's still a process whenever we get ready to do an ordinance change or adoption. So it's not like we get to make the decision. It has to go to the public. It has to go before the community for a first read, where they can give recommendations and insights as well, and then it comes back. So I don't want people to think that this is one and done. There's still a lengthy process that we have to go through, and so I just wanted to make sure that I brought that up this evening, because sometimes the information can be overwhelming, and it seems like, and that's not what it is. There are a lot of steps that have to be made, and so yeah, so we still have time, and so I don't want us to feel like we're rushing. We have time. And if there are things that we as committee members want to lift up, we should do that as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman.
This is Director Sipling. Just wanted to say thank you to all of our community members for their response to what our chair brought up about some recent missteps from the Public Safety Department. Like many people who saw videos and photos, it was incredibly disturbing and disappointing to see. And what I'm very grateful for is the community coming together to respond to that. It is the community's response that causes these sorts of situations to have that, to be aired out, and for accountability to take place. I wanted to highlight that in particular because this is one example and one very extreme example of something going not as it should have. But I do want to encourage that collective, combined, organized voice is how changes get made throughout all of this process. So I encourage folks just to keep that in mind. If there's change you want to see, be loud, be organized, come together, make yourself unavoidable. That's part of how this change happens. I just wanted to highlight our community for their response to that, and also just simply encourage that we can continue that sort of motion moving forward.
Director Dickerson, I just wanted to say that I did ask to be a part of the nominating committee, but I don't know the process and when I assume the role, or?
So I appoint people to committees. Currently, the committee is full because we can't have a quorum. So there's 3 people, Commissioner Hoffman, Director Calderon, as well as Director Moore Doyle. Those are the 3 that are from the Civil Rights Board that are on the commission. Currently, I think every subcommittee is full. I know there's 3 of us on the Ordinance Review. Vice Chair Sibling.
Yes, I apologize for my interruption. Now that Director Lukeman has stepped down, she was previously on the Education Subcommittee, so that is a spot that is open. Apologize again for my interruption.
Okay, so yeah, there is actually a space as far as the Education Subcommittee that is open. And I think they've been meeting monthly, if that is something you're interested in. Yes, you are interested? Okay, I know we're closing now, but I am appointing Director Dickerson to the Education Subcommittee. I just want to put that on record so you can connect with Vice Chair Sibling for information, and she can get you added to the email. Director Calderon?
Yeah, I just have one quick thing. I know earlier on when we started the meeting, you had mentioned some expectations of board members around replying to email within 72 hours, communicating absences to the chair and vice chair. And I just wanted to point out that in section 3.5 around vacancies, it mentions that a member who's absent for 3 consecutive meetings or more than 50% of the regular meetings of the board is considered to have resigned and their seat may be deemed vacant. Is there any clarity around committees or committee meetings being included within that?
No, there's no clarity around the subcommittee meetings. That is only in regards to the board meetings. However, that is a discussion you can have within the subcommittee to figure out what is the expectations during that meeting. Currently, I know each subcommittee is only meeting once a month. Nomination committee shouldn't be meeting anytime soon, considering we already have 3 candidates. So, since there's no further comments, I will end. I want to say thank you all for taking the time. I think this is probably the longest meeting I've had. I appreciate the patience. I appreciate the patience of the board as well. I appreciate the communication, us being able to come to a meeting of the minds and trying to figure out different ways that we need to move forward. I also want to say thank you to all the applicants that put in their applications, because that is what a lot of the conversation was surrounding today, and the fact that we really did have 3 good applicants. So we appreciate that, and we will hopefully have a special meeting. I'll touch on that. And the only reason I didn't want to say we would have a special meeting and give a specific day too is because nomination committee has to get together. I don't want to say and give a timeline to say in 1 month and they can't meet before then. And then there's a possibility that they can meet even sooner. And if we could get into say 2 months or 2 weeks having a special meeting. So I just want to see how that process is going to work with them having that communication. Because I really would prefer it even be before a month. That's me personally, only because then that gives the city commission time to put it on their agenda to try to have someone in the seat by October. Thank you, Continuing City, for support. And I just also want to lift up too, I thank community for supporting, coming to the mic for Spring Valley. Once again, I've had the opportunity to go out there and speak with a lot of people that was able to come to the mic. And so I just appreciate that that was able to continue as well, because that is over 40 years of gathering. It's changed up a little bit from just kind of passing through to being in one space where everyone is coming together. But it gives a positive place for people to be on Sundays. There has not been an incident, no fights, no shots, no nothing. And so we have to recognize the positivity that we see and a lot of positivity to continue. But thank you and appreciate it. Once again, Isaac's annual meeting is August 11th, next Tuesday. Hope to see you guys there. I will entertain a motion to dismiss.
Director DeBoer, I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Director Dickerson, second.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned at 7:05 p.m. Thank you, have a good night.